Political analyst Javed Rana is joining us now to discuss the latest developments. Okay, now as far as Israel increasing its attacks in the region, the Israeli attacks, or expanding rather, the Israeli attacks in Lebanon are also increasing, along the southern border, and thousands of people have been displaced there. Can we expect a ground operation by Israeli forces now? In which direction do you think this is headed?
The US president has come up with a statement giving a proposal that there has to be a ceasefire between Lebanon and the apartheid state of Israel. It's a 21-day ceasefire proposal. The point is, why Arab countries are backing this proposal where Gaza genocidal war is excluded. Hezbollah has been fighting as a backup force to the Hamas, and to basically to play their role to reduce the pressure on Hamas in Gaza conflict. But again, the bigger picture is this looks like a trap which has been launched by Israel, where Americans are partners in the crimes, where the French and the Britons, they are the partners in the crimes. They've been providing all kind of weaponaries. They've been supplying all latest sophisticated weapons, where they make it sure that the Lebanese people are killed, where they make it sure that the people, the helpless, unarmed civilians are killed in Gaza. So I think now, in a very systematic manner, first they launch, and still the genocidal war is there in Gaza. They have withdrawn their part of the forces from Gaza and deployed them in the West Bank to occupy more and more territories, and also in the northern part of the apartheid state of Israel, just as an option as a contingency plan to occupy physically southern parts of Lebanon. You may recall that from 1982 to 2000, Israel occupied the southern parts of Lebanon, and I think this Hezbollah is a byproduct of the merciless brutalities of Israel against the Palestinian population. If they want to replay the same thing, I don't think the results are going to be very different. My understanding of the situation is that Israel, it looks like that the very objective of this onslaught on Lebanon is quite simple: to make it sure that the kind of the backup support that Hamas has been getting and giving tough time to the apartheid state military, that in one way or the other is tackled. And Americans are just trying to play that role. This ceasefire has to be there across the region, because this entire conflict in the Lebanon is simply because of the fact that there is a genocidal war going on in Gaza. That is a bigger picture. And I believe that since the Turkish president has met with so many international leaders, he highlighted those points, that in what manner the two-state solution is important, in what manner the ceasefire is important. He has warned the world that how in a very dangerous manner, Israel is expanding its war, and it enjoys impunity from prosecution, or all kind of prosecution anywhere in any court of the world. So in a situation when Israel is not being held accountable, I think the role of the Turkish president is certainly something which singles out Turkey along with Iran, that they are still standing by the people in the Palestine, by the people of Lebanese in a very meaningful manner, unlike the Arab countries and unlike other Muslim countries, which ironically also include my country, Pakistan. The Israeli military chief has warned and has shown his intention that they intend to occupy parts of southern Lebanon, and the reason they've been resorting to carpet bombing in the southern part of Lebanon is simple: that they don't want to fight with the Hezbollah. They are simply eliminating anything which is visible to them, any human being which is visible to them. They have killed dozens of the children, the women, among 500, 600 people. Do you think they were the members of Hezbollah? This is a complete nonsense. They are coming up with the kind of the justification that since Hezbollah had a stockpile of the weapons in these villages, so we are bombing them. So who is being killed? These are the innocent children. And had that been the case, I think there have been much bigger explosions in these villages because of the multiple explosion of the stockpile of the weapons. I think Israel has not managed so far to fully penetrate within the ranks and files of Hezbollah, though they have partially managed in the telecom system. Lebanese society is very divided on ethnic and on religious and sectarian grounds. That is why I think Israel has a great network in the Lebanese society. And we have seen that the pages were blown up, these walkie-talkies were blown up, and that was, by the way, by and large, a network of a civilian network where these aid workers were there. There were doctors, there were assistants to them whose pages were blown up, and they thought that mostly they belonged to Hezbollah. By and large, Hezbollah's military strength is still intact. They still have the weapons. And let me tell you a very important development which is unfolding, and that is that Iran has facilitated a kind of a discrete deal between Yemeni Houthis and the Russians, whereby very advanced weapons, anti-ship missiles, and they are known as P-800. Yemenis are trying to buy it from Russia, and that would mean that those weapons could possibly be used in the event of a war, when Americans would be intervening, Americans would be attacking on Iran, or if this war further explodes. And that will be that all the warships of the Americans could possibly be targeted. It's not just going to be restrict itself. The Yemenis are not going to restrict themselves to the Red Sea. It is going to expand. So I think the region is basically now shaking up. Nobody knows what exactly Prime Minister Netanyahu is looking for. What we certainly know that domestically he wants war, because if there is end of the war, that means he would be investigated, his political fate is going to be seized. But I think theologically he is a part and parcel of a kind of a secret Zionist agenda where they want to expand war and eliminate the threat of Iran. I think that is at the heart of this war, and that is the bigger fear in Tehran, and that is a bigger fear among many people, that in what manner Netanyahu would create justification to attack Iran. The assassination of Hamas leader was part and parcel of the same policy. Americans are reluctant to engage themselves in a bigger conflict, but Netanyahu and his supporters, Zionist lobby in Washington, we don't know what agenda they are carrying, but certainly we do know that they have a very stinky theological agenda where they believe that the Palestinians are subhuman beings, and even rest of the world is a subhuman being. They are the superior. So I think let's see how things unfold, but certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu has a very nasty agenda.
Okay, just one last question now, Javed. Going back to the UNGA, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres himself has condemned the collective punishment of Palestinians in Gaza, focusing particularly on the devastating humanitarian impact of military actions and blockades on the civilian population. What are the potential roles of international legal bodies like the International Criminal Court in addressing these violations, and why have they struggled and failed to gain traction in this genocide?
I think International Criminal Court has proceeded, and they proceeded to at least initially to the extent that the investigation has been completed, where they have found that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his defense ministers. They are the war criminals. And then obviously this case would be processed, and we don't know how much time would it take. They have also bracketed Hamas leaders, which I think is just basically to create a so-called a false balance, to let the world know that they are striking balance. My understanding is that the Hamas retaliated from an occupied territory inside the occupied territories, and under UN's General Assembly's late 70s resolutions, 1970s resolutions, and people who are under the occupation, they have the right for an armed struggle. So in that broader context, I think UN General Assembly's resolutions, though it has a morally important, they do allow Hamas and other jihadi group to physically to have an armed struggle against an occupying force. But again, the point that President Tayyip Erdogan has been touching down, that the hurdle is these are the 5 countries, and more particularly in focus is the US, because they have been vetoing all resolutions against Israel. And even in the past, those UN Security Council resolutions which were passed against Israel, those have not been complied with, because under those resolutions, these occupied territories, like in the West Bank, like in the East Jerusalem, from there Israel is supposed to withdraw its military and hand back these territories to the Palestinians. That has not happened. And you may recall one of the old interview of Prime Minister Netanyahu. He said that the Palestinians don't need to have a state. They have already a state. Their state is Jordan, because the Jordan, according to him, the majority of the people there are from the Palestinian region, so they already have a state. They don't need a state. 1.5 years ago, that he came up with a map in the UN speech, where he has shown the Palestinian territories as a part of apartheid state of Israel. That indicates that no matter what happens, no matter what world thinks, no matter what UN Security Council resolutions in the past say, Israel is not going to concede for a 2-state solution. And that is at the heart of the problem. That means more and more wars. That means more and more retaliatory attacks from the jihadi groups. This is going to continue in years to come.
Now, I certainly do want to hone in on the United Nations and the speech that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan delivered there. So he criticized the United Nations for being dysfunctional and compared Gaza to a concentration camp, a statement that clearly reflects widespread anger and frustration in the Muslim world. How do such statements impact the narrative around the Israeli genocide in Gaza and the Arab collective, the collective Arab response, which hasn't been so strong after all?
Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan sounded very upset, and I think for very understandable reasons, in what manner these 5 countries who have the veto powers in the UN Security Council, they've been pushing their agenda with particular focus on the US, which has been vetoing all those resolutions which have been tabled in one way or the other against Israel. So I think that has been a bigger part of the problem. He has been advocating that there has to be use of force against the apartheid state of Israel to bring an end to this genocidal war. Again, this is obviously an ideal situation if that kind of scenario builds up, and we know that is unlikely to happen as the situation exists on the ground, as the Biden administration is a part and a parcel of a bigger plan to let Israel to expand its territory illegally.
Okay, Javed, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate your contribution and insight.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geo-strategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geo-strategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.